Sounds good. Well, I am going to share my screen so that you all can see just kind of what we're going to be going over and follow along. And like I said, I will send this along in a separate email just so you have it. You can print it off. The way that I structured it while setting it up, there is some space to jot notes and kind of brainstorm what you're looking for with your support group. So feel free to use it as a workbook. Previously, BDSRA had created a one-to-one peer support, more of a buddy that would walk alongside of a newly diagnosed family. And I also have that document. It's a little old. It could definitely use some updating, but it has some really good advice if you're looking for more one-on-one mentorship as well. I will go ahead and share. Can everyone see this okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you probably won't be able to read along with it.
I can't read it, but I recognize the family.
Oh, yeah. That's the Hawkins family. They just, or not Hawkins. Yes.
McCorkle.
McCorkle. Thank you. I'm sorry. They both had losses back to back there. So again, just thank you all for joining and being willing to venture into a new world as you're not currently leading a support group. I know it can be kind of intimidating, especially when we're looking at working with families that are grieving and facing anticipatory grief, or Rachel, if you have a sick group, you're anticipating the mourning of a sibling. So I appreciate you all for being here and being willing to kind of walk into this new space. So the 6 main topics that we're going to kind of focus on is creating an atmosphere, structuring your group, creating some group rules and guidelines, how to lead your group, different communication styles, and maybe covering some more difficult personalities and how you can work to make sure that your group has a really good flow. And then just a reminder that this is not necessarily the easiest topic in the world to cover, and that I want you to feel the freedom to be flexible with yourself and your group. If you ever do need to take a step back, you know, that is something that you need to protect yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup. So those are the sections. So just kind of setting the tone. You know, COVID-19 has taught us more than anything else that we can be really flexible around location, meeting times, how many people. I will say that right now, if you are looking to lead a group and you don't have the capacity to host an online event, if you just want to shoot me an email, I can set you up an event that you can share, and then you can host it through the BDSRA's Zoom account. As long as we don't have too many conflicting meetings, that should be perfectly fine on our end, because we want to empower you to do this. So, Rachel, you might be looking more at like an in-person or a hybrid, especially if you're hoping to connect within the Chicago group.
Yeah.
That's really great for building intimacy really quickly. With virtual, you can always miss certain things or just face distractions. You know, it's really easy to get caught up in the noises and the atmosphere in your own home. So whatever works best for you. Same thing with meeting time. Just kind of be wary that it might conflict with dinner times or work schedules or those kinds of things. Google Forms is a free form that you can kind of create to send out. Same thing with SurveyMonkey and Doodle. They all have free forms that if you want to ask for times or availability once you kind of meet your people, I really encourage using any of those three. They're really simple. You kind of just plug and chug information, and then you can receive that back. As far as number of attendees, I've heard a lot of different numbers as far as what is ideal. Some of the sources that I looked at primarily focus between 5 and 12 people. Any more than 12 people tend to feel lost in the shuffle, especially with Zoom. When you have 12 people on a group call and they're all trying to share, an hour can go by super quick. So I would definitely encourage, if you're doing virtual, to keep it lower than that. Any less than 5 tends to maybe dive a little bit deeper than you might want, or it might feel too intimate too fast. So I would really encourage to try to stay somewhere in between there. My hope for conference this year, whether it's hybrid or virtual, is to have a spot that folks can register to join a support group, as well as those interested in leading them. So if this is something that you would like to do, just keep an eye out for that opportunity this summer, and I can potentially send some people your way as well. And then as far as who you should invite, remember again that this is your group. So I really think that you all should be comfortable with the people in there. So that is setting some firm boundaries. Like I said, this is your space, your mental health. If there is somebody that just is not a good fit for your group, I know it might be a hard conversation, but you need to protect yourself and the other members of your group. So that being said, feel free to be as selective as you need to be, whether or not that's, a women-only group, a dad-only group, specific to a CLN, specific to SIBs, specific to parents who are not yet bereaved or parents who are bereaved. Does anyone have any questions before I move on to the next one? Or
I'm good. It's Lori. Mute and video are off again.
hey, Lori.
I'm just cooking dinner while I'm listening, but everything's good so far.
Okay, perfect. All right. So as far as structuring your group, there traditionally are two different sets. You can have an open group or a closed group. An open group has revolving attendance. So if you have, I keep coming back to you, Rachel, because you're a sibling, or you have that sibling relationship. But if you have a newer sib who wants to jump in, this would just allow someone the flexibility of not having to build upon something in order to join. So if you are going through a book, for instance, within your group, they won't need to read 5 chapters before they're good to go. So this one is a little bit more loose, a little less structured, maybe. But it's easy for anyone to jump right in and not feel like they've been out of the loop or they have to catch up. And then a closed group is something that would have a little bit more structure. So that would be more so if you decide to have 6 topics you want to go through, and you want it to just be like a summer study or a winter study or leading up to the holidays, or in Donna's instance, you want it to be around advocacy and you want 4 sessions, and you want it to be how to contact your local senators, how to advocate for greater legislation, prenatal screenings, those kinds of things, and you want 4 specific topics. even with that though, I feel like most people could pick and choose. So whatever you think would work best for you. I think the closed group would offer a little bit more of an opportunity if you do need to guard your heart a bit throughout the year, or you know that you really can't handle doing this during a specific season, whether that's a anniversary date or something similar. This would kind of give you the freedom to say, okay, we're going for 8 weeks, we're taking a 3-month break, and then we'll begin again. And those can be really natural times to invite more people as well if you're hoping to structure it that way. Um, Closed groups traditionally have maybe an acknowledgement that someone is going to sign up through the duration of your support group or your whatever kind of group you're hoping to lead here. And then this next one kind of focuses around group rules, right? It's the typical first day of school. You know, you're setting some ground rules for your group, for your classroom. These can be highly emotional gatherings. And we want to make sure that everyone has an idea of what is appropriate and what is not. So just making sure that people are aware that respect and being gentle with one another, whatever your group decides is important. This is something you can set before you begin your group and have that expectation ready to go, or it's something that you can brainstorm during one of the first sessions. I really encourage you to do this with your group. With anything, when you have some creative say in what goes on and what your rules are going to be, you have more buy-in. This example is a really just kind of a nicely thought out one, centering around grief and experiences. If you want, you can obviously steal this for your own and just have this in your invite. You could also copy and paste this into your Google form. That way people know what and when they're signing up for. It really entirely up to you how you decide to structure that. Any questions around group rules or setting the tone in that regard? Okay. We'll move on to the next one. So this is day of leading your group. I would, if you are doing a virtual call, I would say no longer than 45 minutes to an hour. If you have an in-person and you're meeting once or twice a month, this could be 1 to 2 hours, especially once, COVID restrictions are lifted. I would always recommend beginning your support group with some kind of ritual. I know in the book study I'm in, we have 2 happies and crappy, and we share, 2 highs of our day and a low. You can do 2 things you're grateful for, something you're struggling with, something you're looking forward to during your week, or share a silly story or memory. Those serve dual purpose. So it's a ritual that allows people to know that it's time to begin, it's time to kind of lean into your group, but it also sets the tone. So you can open with a prayer if you're religious. It just really gives a good foundation to let people know that you're beginning. It's an icebreaker for your group to get to know one another. And it's really just an opportunity to lean in a bit more. And again, the middle, it depends if you're doing a closed or an open group. On the right side of this page, I pasted just some starter questions if you're looking at getting started, if you don't want something super structured. So just some loose questions to get the conversation going, such as how are family and friends responding to your loss? Where are you finding the support you need? Can you share some of your fears? What do you wish you had done differently before and after death? Are there times when it doesn't seem real? What did you gain from your loved one that you will always have? What special quality did they have that you would like to develop in yourself? Since no one is perfect, what was your loved one's most irritating trait? What is the most difficult time of day? How do you manage it? What are your most difficult reminders, such as a favorite restaurant, place where a loved one died, loved one's favorite chair, and how do you deal with these? What new role do you find most difficult for you? And where can you go for help? These are, again, very loose based. If you are picking out any one of these, I would really encourage you to do just kind of a loose Google search. On the back side of this, or the last page, there's a resource guide that can jumpstart your process if you're looking for some really good, reliable sites. What's Your Grief is one of my favorite. whatsyourgrief.com, I believe it's a .com. They have really good, .com. They have really great resources with a really broad spectrum of needs. So it can go from how to go through loss with a child to how to wrap your mind around anticipatory grief. It just kind of covers the whole gamut. So I'd really encourage that. If you're looking to have something maybe reflective on research that's out there, you can always sign up for our Illuminator that goes out at the end of the month, and it has new developments. If you ever find anything in there, feel free to bring that up. A lot of the time when there's new research happening, it can bring up different feelings around that, whether that's hope or disappointment from not being eligible. So I would really encourage you to dive into those as well with your group. And then similar to the opening, having a closing, a way to end each meeting that signals it's time to end the gathering, I find really important. So this could be as simple as a poem, a moment of silence, a meditation, or a reflection. I find guided meditations work really well with this, and there are a number on apps like Headspace or Hollow. It's a really way to de-escalate any emotions you have and then leave the group feeling like maybe a little bit lighter. Like I said, these are topics so close to everyone's heart that the last thing I would want to do is open up a whole bunch of wounds and then have you go on your week and still be thinking about them. Some processing is good, but we don't want to harm in the in between. All right. Any questions about this or ideas?
I had a question, and you may be going into this next, but I was curious about the role of the facilitator. And obviously, if you are, which I think most of us here are, if you are a facilitator with personal experience with Batten disease, are you encouraged to share and participate just like you are a participant, or is there some kind of different way that you approach your role as a facilitator versus like an actual member of the support group? if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
it could vary a lot.
It definitely, you know, I think you will probably end up playing both hats, right? Especially in marriage and family counseling. So having good boundaries is always important if you are wanting to stay very objective. I think it depends on the group you're leading, how much you decide to share. If you are hoping to merely be a support, I would encourage you to maybe when you're creating this program or you're thinking ahead to the next week and planning, I would spend some time with it yourself to really get an idea of how you're feeling about the topic. Because when you have taken the time out to process before going in, you have emotionally kind of built yourself up. So you can't prepare for everything, but you can maybe be able to take a step back if things are really emotional and be able to facilitate a bit more in the moment. That's what your group needs. Being vulnerable and having kind of that radical transparency is incredibly hard to do all the time for everyone.
Yeah.
It's the fastest way to build trust and relationship though. So I think it really depends on what you personally are hoping to get out of the support group as well. So I would just say to prepare as much as possible. That way, if you need to take a step back and facilitate a bit more, maybe you're less emotionally charged doing so. However, I would also really encourage you to be the one that can then say, okay, Sue, I see that you are feeling really strongly about this situation. Is there anything that we can do to kind of take a step back and look at this from a different light? Or you can be able to cut someone off, which I know sounds terrible, but people tend to ramble. And it can be incredibly lethargic, but it can derail your whole conversation as well. So
Right.
able to interrupt and say, okay, well, thank you for sharing. Let's focus on this and change the subject and just kind of be able to wrap up. So I think letting the group put that trust in you to be able to facilitate and just, going back to the rules, like just having them be aware of what the expectations are and that we're all going to be respectful of each other's time and each other's emotions. So I think it's a balance, especially as a group leader. And I know I just went around in circles a bunch. I hope that helps.
No, it does help. It does help a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just agree with you, Morgan, from an advocacy perspective. The few times that we have come together, I think that the dynamic is genuinely different each time. And so sometimes you kind of need to go first, if you will, and share your own personal kind of experience, strength, and hope, if you will, so that folks know kind of how it's supposed to go. And then other times it just flows freely and you don't have to do much in way of personal interjection, but very rarely does it follow any scripted agenda. I just stopped doing it because it doesn't it doesn't always go. It's who's in attendance and what the vibe is. So I would say come with a certain amount of flexibility, because you may not get exactly what you think. Well, what Morgan has outlined is beautiful. Another gold star for you, Morgan. It's absolutely wonderful. I would just say that it doesn't always go exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And then just to kind of build that. So these are the types of people that you might see. The interrupter, the person who just won't let anyone finish a thought without jumping in with their own. And with each one of these, I just put kind of an example of how you might be able to step in. So for the interrupters, say, Sue, I can see you have a lot on your mind, but it's John's turn to talk right now. And, you know, it's something that you can say without causing like a lot of disgruntlement or, you know, ill feelings. If necessary, you might need to be more direct in pointing out that this person is interrupting. Did they realize, you know, like I said, these are some very emotional topics, and some people just might jump in without thinking much about it. This is a conversation too. If you've built some trust within your group, that you can definitely have on the side. Be like, hey, I know we're talking about this. I haven't really heard much from Jack, and I know that this is probably a topic that's really close on your heart. Could you maybe try to encourage him to speak up a bit during the conversation too, and kind of give them a sense of leadership within that, and that might help curb some of that tendency. The expert, the person who seems to need to tell fellow participants how they should solve all their problems. This is a very fine line because we want to be able to share, we want to be able to encourage people's expertise. That in families and moms and dads and siblings, they know what they experience more accurately than any textbook could ever describe, any, you know, presentation I put together. They live this day in, day out, and they are the experts of the disease in their life. However, what might work for some person might not work for another. And I would just say use your best judgment if you kind of get that feeling that maybe not everyone is on board, to thank them for sharing and then move on. It doesn't really help anyone to say, well, you might be wrong. and you know, your group is not there to have a fight or disagreements. They're there to support one another. So I would try the best as you can to avoid people kind of going at odds with one another, just for flow and dynamic. The rambler, which is me. This is the person that goes on and on. As one thought reminds them of another. So this is the person that just keeps on going on their train of thought. And then after, you know, 10 minutes, you realize that you're lost in a different space and you're talking about the draft. You know, it's just one of those things that you need to keep that person maybe reined in a bit. Similar to the interrupter, you have to find those pauses that you can quickly thank him or her for sharing their thoughts, and then just kind of move on with a direct question to bring it back into the group, to bring it to maybe someone who's a little bit quieter, maybe, which is the observer, that person that is really quiet most of the time. Maybe it's very recent that they're experiencing loss, or their grief is just really heavy on their heart during a particular season, or they're just naturally pretty quiet and don't want to be vulnerable with the group. The only thing that I would really encourage you about that person, other than, you know, giving them space and making sure that they're seen, is as time goes on, silent people tend to be ignored. And especially by your group, if someone is never talking, they might not get referenced, they might not feel looped in. And after a while, they may not find that they can actually interject. So I would really encourage you to try to ask them direct questions every once in a while, or read their nonverbals to be able to loop them in. The complainer. So this is the person that might struggle with taking responsibility for his or her actions, or they find fault with everything. Nothing is right or good, and solutions are met with negativity. again, grief is a multi-sided bear, and this person might just be going through a ton and is not in a very good headspace. You can maybe question their intent by complaining a bit, but I would really encourage you to maybe pull them aside and ask if they need maybe a little bit more one-on-one, or if you can give them an outside referral. There are a couple good online support pieces listed. I found that the person that is complaining about a lot of stuff is really just trying to process, right? They are overwhelmed. They can't see good at that point in time. So it might be a little bit much for a peer support group to kind of tackle a root problem of why the complainer is just disgruntled. But I'd really encourage you to look for outside referrals, or if you need an outside referral, you can always email me. I did link, it's called SAMHSA. It is kind of the National Mental Health Database, and they have all of their counselors linked within that. And it goes by pay scale as well. So if someone doesn't have insurance, there are sliding pay scales as well that people can sign up for, which, you know, again, that's not necessarily your job, but if they're struggling, they can't find a place that would accept them and they don't have the financial resources to seek counseling, it's just a really wonderful website. But again, if you're not comfortable doing that, but they say they'd like counseling, you can always refer them to me, and I'd be more than happy to help them find something. And then the angry person. And anger is a super common emotion to experience when people are grieving. What I would think would be exceptionally difficult is if this person is directing their anger at another group member. So if they're angry due to the loss or the decline, and they are name calling because of it, they're kind of going off the rails. That's more when I would interject and say that that's not appropriate. That's not following our guidelines or rules that we set. However, validating that the people who are feeling angry and are expressing their anger in more constructive ways where they're just visibly hurt, validating that and making sure that they know that feeling angry and upset is totally normal, and that in a lot of ways the universe has wronged them. And that it's more than okay to feel that feeling and to process, and that your group is a safe place to process those feelings of anger. Any questions about these types, or if you think of any other types that you might see that you're wondering how to move forward with? And then just to kind of conclude, like I said in the beginning, this is one of those endeavors that is maybe not going to be as straightforward as you'd hope it to be, or you find yourself needing a break for your heart or your mental health. And that, again, is just 100% okay. Also, your group members may join and then halfway through realize that they are just not ready to process this, and they're definitely not ready to process this with a whole bunch of peers. And allowing them the opportunity to step out or away, or to take a hiatus. Those are all things just to be aware of. Or if someone just randomly decides to ghost you or not respond again, they may feel embarrassed that they overshared, or they may feel embarrassed that they reacted the way they did. So I would just encourage you to be mindful of how people are sharing and how they might feel at the end, And if you think that someone maybe ended something rough, maybe check in on them before your next meeting to see how they're doing. But again, I wouldn't take it too personally because these are such intimate topics that are close to a lot of people's hearts. And I just want you to feel empowered knowing that it's okay if people step away, and it's okay if you need to take a step away. Something that I would really encourage is shared leadership. So if you have a partner or someone else who can lead the group if you're not able to, life happens, appointments pop up, things you just can't anticipate. And if you have someone else who can pick up the reins and lead a group, it can also take some burden off you if you're just, I didn't sleep last night and I am not doing so well today. And I don't know if I can handle, back and forth or facilitating or taking on that role of facilitator. It's just really nice to have that person that you can go to, or halfway through you can give a look and just like, can you help me? So they're on board with what you're trying to do and accomplish. A partner in crime, so to speak. And then other things that you can do that aren't necessarily a peer-led support group that just might be nice. If you find that this is, way too much or not what you're looking for, you can always lead a book club with those people that has nothing to do with grief or loss, just as a nice, light opportunity to gather and be with people who have walked down a similar journey as you, and they just really want that fellowship and to feel seen. You could also do some more art therapy-ish things, those self-care items. Like you can pull up a Bob Ross painting and just get together and paint and share what you want to share if you want to share something. If not, you can just chat about your Netflix shows. And then you can always just have an outing or a group or a dinner, something that allows for catching up, maybe some deeper conversation, but it doesn't have to. Not every time I'm with my closest friends do I want it to be deep and heavy and bare my whole heart. Sometimes it's nice just to go have fun. And I think that's something, especially right now, we could all use a little bit more fun. And then you can always send meals, cards, gifts of encouragement for families who are struggling. So if you really just can't be vulnerable or you don't have the emotional capacity to be present right now, there are tons of other ways to still reach out without overextending yourself. So you can always send a nice card, just, hey, thinking of you, or sending someone coffee. I know that's something I do with my girlfriends. If I'm just thinking of them and they're extra heavy on my mind, I might send them a coffee. So all just little things you can do to still encourage and to uplift. And you can incorporate these into your group, or if you have had a few heavy weeks and you just decide that instead of laying another heavy topic, you're just going to get together to paint. And I think that would be really helpful for your hearts and just lighten things up a bit. And then here are some good mental health and grief resources. I would highly encourage What's Your Grief. We have a few physical items at our office here in Columbus, Ohio. So if you're looking for like a physical pamphlet, we have one on anticipatory grief and then walking a child through loss. So if you're looking for either of those, we have those. But if you're looking for anything else, they're pretty reasonable, even if you're wanting to buy them for your group. I think it's around $2 to $3 per one. Or if you just want one for yourself. Most items are free though. The findtreatment.gov, that's that same sub website that I was talking about that I really love. The Dougie.org is children's specific grief resource. And then Grief Recovery Method is a great online support platform. So that's another one that if you're just needing to hook someone up with someone with a licensed counselor that's in a similar platform that you're finding they just need a little bit more processing, that would be a really great alternative. Some books that might be nice to go over in your group. For One More Day, Mitch Albom, Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. Option B, Facing Adversity, Building Resilience and Finding Joy by Sheryl Sandberg. This is my absolute favorite book on resiliency. Remembering with Love by Elizabeth Levang. The Memory Keeper's Daughter. The Two of Pooh by Benjamin Hoff. The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion. And When Bad Things Happen to Good People by Harold Kushner. And like I said, I'll send all these in an email, so don't feel to write them down or keep super strenuous notes. I'll send out this whole PDF. But yeah, so that's that. Like I said, just a basic outline, how to maybe structure your group, how to begin, how to pick who and when and what. So, any questions?
I saw it and I appreciated the link for child-specific resources. And I was just wondering, and this might be something I just need to do my own web research on, but if there's any teen-specific advice for support groups, like if I were ever to think about doing a support group for SIBs that are not adults, where would I, if you have ideas about that?
Whatsyourgrief.com. That
Okay, perfect.
It genuinely, it will cover everything from toddler ages up until seniors. So it kind of is the entire compass. I can also pull together some other resources and send them your way, just so you don't have to do all the work along the way.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Any other questions, thoughts? Okay. Well, I will be having 2 of these a year. So one in the spring, one in the fall. So in the meanwhile, if you have anyone that reaches out and says that they want to be hooked up with a training or they want the resources, obviously you'll have the PDF, but if they want to be able to ask questions, I work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So I'm available anytime to answer questions along the way, but we'll have these structured trainings twice a year.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah,
I got a lot out of this.
Good.
Yeah.
Hey.
I did too, even though I was off video and muted most of the time. I had it right beside me while I prepped, and like I have my dinner all ready to go right now.
Yay. Well, I'll send it off, and like I said, if anything comes up in the meanwhile or you need additional resources, feel free to ask. I stumbled upon some really fun things while creating this for you all. So I'm happy to send along whatever you're looking for.
Cool. I will.
And Morgan, really quickly, and we can also connect offline via email, but I would love to be connected to someone in the Chicago chapter or just some contact that I can email. It would be great.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
We've got a couple of great family foundations in that area that you're gonna love.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yay.
I'm like, Chicago is the place.
Yay.
There's some people there.
Great.
Well, have a great night, everyone. It was nice meeting you, and take care.
Thanks,
Thank
Morgan.
you. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to
Nice
meet
to
you.
meet you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye now.
Bye.